So I found myself thinking about the Denver Broncos and looking ahead to this weekend's game versus them, as I'm sure we all are doing. That being said, it was one of those Michael Jackson looking at the man in the mirror type moments where I'm like, man, these two teams are very similar. What do I mean by that, guys? Before I get into all of that, take a second to subscribe. Okay, so that being said, Denver is coming off of this nice 10-day rest period, similar to what the Green Bay Packers found themselves in before they played the Raiders. And then they found themselves in even more of a rest period with this bye week. So both teams have had plenty of time to get ready for this game. Both teams are underachieving. Both teams have supposed good coaches that are being questioned with their early results to speak, right? With the slow start of book for both teams. That being said, either their social media or media is just as bad and behind the eight ball as the Denver Broncos are, or just news travels much slower there. What do I mean by that? I read an article this morning from the Denver Post, and it says Broncos Roundtable. What do you make of this theoretical Jerry Judy trade to the Green Bay Packers? Okay, this is really old news. Okay, this has happened. It was talked about a couple of weeks ago, but in this article, he goes on to say, "Hey, replacing Judy with Dobbs won't change a thing, but man, it would be nice for the Broncos to get a second rounder." So I would most definitely pull the trigger on this one, they said. Okay. So of course you're gonna want to pull the trigger on this one. Give me a break. So they say adding Romeo Dobbs isn't going to be really much of an upgrade or whatever. I tend to disagree with that. Okay. So Jerry Judy right now, he's proving himself to be a little bit toxic and distracting for a franchise. Okay. So obviously the Denver Broncos, they're coached good. They have a good quarterback. They have a good talented team. Do they? I mean, what is the issue? What is the problem there? Green Bay, we know at least they're really young. There's a lot of question marks, around the Packers. Players, are they going to be able to perform? Are they going to be as good and live up to the hype? But we know, at least in Denver, Jerry Judy is this big question mark. And as we saw, I played a video a few days back with Chris Carter talking about Jerry Judy and just how he's a jag. He calls him just a guy, and he likens him to like he's a third tier wide receiver. I think he's being a little bit harsh. I think he's more of a two tier, maybe a three tier. I don't know. Now, they go on in this article to be like, "Oh my gosh, they're equating it to the Elijah Moore draft pick trade that the Jets did with Cleveland in exchange for a better draft pick." They're likening that to this, and they're like, "Man, I think if the Packers, screw Romeo Dobbs, we don't want him, but if the Packers could give us a second rounder and a fourth or fifth rounder, are you kidding me? Do you think Jerry Judy is worth a two pick? He might be worth a fourth round pick." Okay. In my books, I'm like, okay, if the Packers give up a fourth round pick for Judy, is it the end of the world now? I don't think I think that would be an okay thing because Judy, maybe with a different scenery, different coach, maybe his, attitude could change. Maybe he could form into that tier two wideout. And then you have Dobbs, Watson, Jaden Reed. They would have four really good wideouts, and then you got Luke Musgrave there. But the fact that this is being still talked about, again, either news travels slow there or what. But in this game, in this matchup with the Broncos and Packers, the Broncos have had a slow start. Okay, so let's take a look at who they played. Okay, so the Broncos, they lost to the Raiders, a team that we lost to. Washington, they lost that game. It was a close game. Miami, they just got trounced. If you remember the 70-20 loss to the Miami Dolphins. Now it's a very potent Miami Dolphin team. And I think honestly, they could put up 70 points on our defense also, just depending on the Jekyll and Hyde, which Packer defense shows up, who knows. And then you get the Jets. They lost to the Jets and they lost to Kansas City. The only win that they have is coming against Chicago, and that was a come from behind, kind of like what we did versus the Saints. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about looking at the man in the mirror in this. Both teams are very similar. They both won a game that they should have lost. The Green Bay Packers did that with the New Orleans Saints. And then the Denver Broncos did that with Chicago Bears. Both teams are searching for their identities, and they're both being rumored in these trade talks. Is something going to happen? Who knows? If I were a betting man, I would definitely say that is not going to happen. Guys, leave your comments. Let me know what you think about the Denver supposed trade or this game coming up. Let me know what you think. Go Pack.